many ways, but human nature has remained the same. You see, we have a tendency in this day, as in that day, to worship the miracle rather than the master. We have a tendency to worship the sensational rather than the Savior. And perhaps that is one of the reasons that why more instantaneous miracles do not occur. But sometimes God, in His love and grace and wisdom, does heal instantly. You could share with me numerous examples of this. I remember when Montaigne and I lived in Mobile. There was a lovely young lady in our church named Stephanie. Stephanie was the president of the NYM, one of the most effervescent and radiant Christians I have ever met in my life. She loved the Lord. She was a leader in every part of our church, a beautiful girl, and everybody loved her. It was the first church that Montaigne and I served. And Stephanie started complaining of headaches, and her parents took her to the doctor. I remember we were living in Mobile, and they wanted to do a brain scan, and since they did not have a machine, they took her to Pensacola, where they did a brain scan. Montaigne and I went over with the family. And I remember after they did that brain scan, 3 days later, Stephanie's mother, Mary Nell, called me, and I could tell by the tone of her voice that she was deeply distraught. And she said, "George, the neurosurgeon is calling me and wants me to come to his office right now." Mary Nell's husband was a millwright there at International Paper Company. He did not get off. And she said, "George is my pastor, and you go with me. I don't have a good feeling about this." I remember with Montaigne and I, right there on Spring Hill Avenue in Mobile, we went to see that neurosurgeon. They ushered us right in. There was a waiting room filled with people. And I remember that neurosurgeon. I closed my eyes and I can see him sitting there now. He told Mary Nell, "Your daughter has a very large brain tumor." I remember how anguished that physician, that kind doctor was. They immediately put Stephanie in the hospital. I remember that very night we gathered about the altar of that little Methodist church in Mobile County. During the whole, it was a small church, everybody came. And we sang that song that you sang a moment ago, the healing. And there, as we gathered about the altar, we prayed for Stephanie. And I remember the prayer I lifted up for her as though it were yesterday. I prayed, "Lord, in accord with your divine will, I pray that you will touch Stephanie. And if it is your will to bring healing to you, to her, I pray to that end. But whatever happens, Lord, we promise to love you and praise you and serve you faithfully." And I remember after I prayed that, I had a feeling in my soul that I have never had in any kind of intercessory prayer. It was as though a shock of electricity went through me. Montaigne had the same feeling within her being. The next day, Montaigne and I were at the hospital, in the Mobile Infirmary there. We were with Stephanie and her parents. And that same neurosurgeon walked in, and I will never forget the expression upon his face as he looked at us and said, "I have no medical explanation for what I'm going to tell you, but that tumor is completely gone. It's not there anymore." I remember we just fell to the floor right there in that hospital room with precious Stephanie in the bed. We just lifted our voices in praise and song to God. And you'll never be able to convince Stephanie's parents that God did not touch their daughter and instantly healed her. And you will never convince my wife and me that God did not, in response to that prayer, instantly touch their daughter and heal her of that tumor. Yes, sometimes God, in accordance with the divine counsels of His providence, He reaches down and brings instantaneous healing. And then very quickly, and I'm only going to mention that there's a fifth type of healing. Did you notice a moment ago when I said a misconception about healing? It is not always God's will for people to be healed in this life. Now, those last three words are important in lifting up that myth, in this life. Because ultimately, every child of God is going to be healed. Some people call it the ultimate healing. Some call it the complete healing. Some call it the healing of the resurrection. As Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 42 through 38 says, in the resurrection, this corruption shall put on incorruption, and this mortality shall put on immortality. Some call it perfect healing, as Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, verses 20 and 21, that our Savior shall change us to be like Him. Now, Jesus is perfect, so that means we shall be perfect like Him in every way. Now, think about that for a moment. It means that because of this healing, there will be no more cancer. There will be no more comas. There will be no more heart disease. There will be no more multiple sclerosis. There will be no more Alzheimer's disease, because there is no sorrow on earth but what heaven cannot heal. Some time ago, I was called to a nursing home there in Auburn to visit two of my dear friends in our church. They're sisters. And I love both of them like my own sisters because of what they've come to be to me. I appreciate their sweet, quiet walk with God. When I arrived, they were with their mother. She was close to the crossing, and they knew that it would not be long. The three of us joined hands. We joined hands with their mother, and we prayed, and we committed her into the arms of Jesus. 3 hours later, at approximately 2 o'clock p.m., they were singing some of the beloved gospel songs to their mother. They were singing the old rugged cross when she closed her eyes, loosened her grip on their hands, and moved into the nearer presence of the Heavenly Father and exchanged her cross for a crown. I never did tell Annette and Guyana, but when I prayed 3 hours earlier, I prayed for their mother's healing. And at 2 o'clock, He gave to her the perfect healing. He gave to her the ultimate healing. He gave to her complete healing. He gave to her heavenly and resurrection healing, because she became like the Lord she loved and she served. Yes, these are 5 ways that I believe God brings healing. Dr. Prater said, the little bird sings not because it has all the answers, but because it has a song. And it's my prayer that this simple little song will assist you as you think about this very important subject that can help us as we deal with divine healing. Now, in closing, is there some area in your life that's asking you where you need healing? I'll challenge you to brush aside any myth or misconception that you have. I'll challenge you to reflect upon these 5 ways. I'll challenge you to let the great physician in this afternoon service touch you at your point of healing. I want our musicians just to step up to their instruments, and we're not going to sing. I want them to play the song that Brother Dave so beautifully sang a moment ago. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon Him. Hallelujah, and praise His name. By His stripes we are healed. What I'm going to do, I'm going to open up our altar and say, blood. Is there some area in your life where you need the healer to touch you? If you'd like to come and just kneel for a few moments, maybe you know somebody. That person needs to have his or her attitudes, their emotions. Maybe there's a frayed and strained relationship that is humanly impossible to deal with. My brothers and sisters, it is divinely possible through God's grace and through His grace. As our musicians play in the sweet Spirit of God moving in our midst, our altar is open.